Today, I want to specifically talk about self-imposed challenges in video games. Now, this could be something like avoid all the coins in a Super Mario game. I'm sure you've seen that on YouTube. There's stuff like that I've done for myself, like, more specifically, in Final Fantasy X, I beat the game using only Aeons, or summons. So Valefor, Ifrit, Exion, Shiva, and Bahamut. Using only them and beating the entire game, at least as much as you can, because obviously, spoilers, you don't have Yuna for some portions of the game, but for the most part, it was doable. And it really changed the way that I looked at the game. What challenges have arisen because of it, and it really was interesting. I think the first time I've ever really done a self-imposed challenge would be Final Fantasy Tactics, because I've beaten that game 50 times, 100 times. That's not outside the realm of possibility that I've beaten the game 100 times. And a big reason for that, I think, is because I did something different every single time I played the game. Or at least I tried to, anyway. Because if you just, have free reign and you just collect whatever you want and use whatever classes you want and special characters you want, eventually you're just gonna run into everything that you can do when you have free reign. And for a game like Final Fantasy Tactics that has just so many different things that you can do, the game really does become so much more than if you just can do anything. For example, there's this certain thing called solo class or single class, where basically you have only knights, and you can only use knight abilities, knight reaction abilities, knight equipment, things like that. Or you can do something like only geomancers, or only chemists, or only white mages. I'm sure you've heard that before. In Final Fantasy 1, you can actually do a 4 white mage challenge, where you only have 4 white mages, and things like that. And that has been really interesting, but before I did all of that, I actually did an RNG sort of thing, where I listed all of the classes 1 through 18. I think I had like Bard and Dancer be the same number, because only females can be dancers and only males can be bards, because that's just how they made the game. So I would go into a random number generator and have it randomly generate 1 through 18, and say I got number 2. Well, number 2 would be Chemist, because that's second on the list, and then say I got 18, which would be, I guess, Dancer or Bard. But that sort of thing really helped me to play Final Fantasy Tactics so much more than I would have. And I love doing those sort of things with games. I've been trying to do that with pretty much every game that I have. Because some games are just kind of like set in stone, where it's like go from A to B, or there's no random like stats that you'll get or random attributes that are awarded. It'll be just the same thing over and over and over. And that's something like Secret of Mana has, where you always have the level up gives you the exact same thing every single time. And I kind of wish that there was like a true randomizer, because I guess randomizers could kind of be a self-imposed challenge, right? You choose to add a randomizer element to it, I guess. So it's kind of self-imposed, but it's not. It's still randomized. So it's not like a specific thing that you're choosing. You're choosing to have a program shuffle around the items you get where and the attributes that you'll get and things like that. But I guess we can also talk about randomizers in a way. But I would like to talk about randomizers in its own little podcast thing, its own little thing, because there's a lot that we talk about there. But I don't know. So that's kind of something, even thinking on it right now, Secret of Mana sounds pretty fun using weapons that I never use. So that would be like the gloves I never use, the boomerang I never really use, the axe I never use, things like that. Because I always use a spear, I always use a sword, I always use a whip. That's pretty much the 3 that I use. The whip has great range, the spear is strong, generally stronger than the sword. The sword is, in my opinion, the most fun to use. I love the charge abilities that it has. So I pretty much always use those 3. And I actually use a bow and arrow a lot as well. So I'd probably take that out, don't use that, and things like that. Or another thing would be like Bloodborne. Every time I play Bloodborne, I use a weapon that I've never used before, because I've used Ludwig's Holy Blade in 2 playthroughs, 3 playthroughs. I gave myself the challenge of using the Blades of Mercy, which are the 2 knives that you hold or become 1 knife, 1 or 2 knives, and that was really fun. It sucked for a good while because the weapon sucked, but once you built it up and built up the strength, or I guess technically skill, but the amount of damage it does and things like that, it became a really useful weapon. And obviously endurance as well, because the weapon requires a lot of endurance, but that sort of thing. And I actually kind of want to use, I don't remember what it's called, but it's kind of like a blade that like goes along your arm that you get kind of early on. I don't remember what it's called, honestly, but there's just different weapons. There's a lot of different weapons in the game, and I'd love to use each one in its own playthrough, just to see how far I get, how well it goes, and it forces you to adapt to the situation, and that's really, really fun to me. Because if I just played the game using the weapon that I'd probably always use, which is Ludwig's Holy Blade, I'd get bored. But I only used it because it was a Chalice Dungeon. I was going through the Chalice Dungeons that I could, and I mean, that one's pretty fun in and of itself because I've never done that before. But there, I actually ended up using different weapons, trying them out, seeing how well they went, because I used a skill-based setup. So next time I'll do strength build with whatever strength weapon that I've never used before. Actually, I do want to use the Kirk Hammer, because I keep trying to use it, but I don't like it. But I kind of want to force myself to use it so I can truly see why I like it, or why I will end up liking it, or why I don't like it. Probably the most famous self-imposed challenge ever would probably be the Nuzlocke challenge. And for those of you that don't know what that is, that's basically change the option to set so you can't swap out a Pokemon after you defeat one of the trainer's Pokemon. And I don't think you can use items at all. You obviously can't use Revives, because if your Pokemon faints, it's gone forever. You have to release it, and you can never use that Pokemon again. And another rule is you can only catch the first Pokemon that you see on a route. So say Route 1, if you see Rattata, if you defeat it, you can't get anything else. You can't get another Rattata, you can't get the Pidgey, you can't get anything. So you have to go to Route 2 to get your next Pokemon. And then Route 3, and then say Viridian Forest, and things like that. So that forces you to use the Pokemon that you first see, and if you're lucky and you get a really good one, like Nidoran, well then, hey, you lucked out. Unless it faints, in which case you have to release it. And that has been so fun and scary, but fun. And it completely changes the way that I play Pokemon. Because I always keep the first Pokemon out, generally, until it faints. And then I go to the next one, level that up until it faints. So on and so forth. Unless there's one that I specifically want to level up because it's going to evolve soon, or it's going to get an ability soon, or, you know, different things like that. But generally, I'm not too worried about it fainting, because I just have it fight until it faints. At least in the Nuzlocke version, or Nuzlocke challenge, I can't let it faint. I can't, because then it's gone, and especially if it's a Pokemon that I need, or if I'm running out of Pokemon. If I only have 2, I don't want any of them to faint, because I don't have backups. I just have the 2, and I think you can actually use items outside of battle, but I think in a battle you can't use items. So outside of battle you can use potions, stuff to heal it. Obviously you don't have to do a full Nuzlocke challenge. You know, some people actually say no healing at the Pokemon Center. I don't really like that challenge personally, because that's not as fun for me. Some people love that challenge, some people don't. You can even do a self-imposed challenge of using a single type, a single element. Say you can only use fire Pokemon, or you can only use rock Pokemon, or only poison Pokemon, or only ghost. And I've never done that before, and saying that right now, it sounds fun. You know, it sounds like it would be a lot of fun to do. I will say that something like Final Fantasy X, I mean, there's a whole community behind self-imposed challenges, like no overdrives, or no swapping out party members, or, I mean, actually that's something that I do personally. I don't like to use every single character, because you have 7 characters, and I'm going to end up swapping to each one for every single battle, and it's so boring. But I do because I want everyone to get experience, but then I don't use everybody anyway. So, for a long time, I chose 3 characters that I wanted to use, and I would use those 3 characters. And I think the biggest challenge that I had with that was using Kimahri, Yuna, and Riku. Because Kimahri is a jack of all trades, master of none. He starts off pretty strong and physical, but there's no true route for him to go. So you can either have him go through someone else's route, in which case he'll be severely nerfed, or pretty much be somebody else's stats, but not as good. Or you can have him go through a wacky, crazy route with opening the locks, the level 2 locks, level 1 locks, things like that. Which is generally what I do with Kimahri. I have him go through Waga's route in the beginning, and then have him go through Lulu's route to get the Firaga, Waterga, Thunderga, and Blizga super early, and then go through all that. Or you can have it go through Tidus's route up the top, and then use a level 2 unlock, or level 2 key or whatever, to go into Auron's route. Some people prefer going down Riku's route, and then collecting a mug and things like that. So there's different things you can do with Kimahri, but for the most part, it's kinda, what do you do? And then with Yuna can't attack. I mean, she can use Aeons, but I prefer not to use Aeons if I'm doing the Kimahri, Yuna, Riku only playthrough. Because Aeons kind of defeat the whole purpose, because they're an extra character, they're super strong, especially if you level up Yuna. If you level up Yuna, Aeons are super strong and broken and destroy everything. It's fantastic. But as far as just Yuna, she can heal HP, and she can nullify elemental damage for 1 turn. Until about halfway through the game when she can use Protect and Shell and things like that, but she doesn't get a good attack magic until literally the absolute last part of her route. Or at least, it's the last ability that you get on her route, technically. In which case, you'd have to use a Black Magic Sphere. If you have Kimahri go through Lulu's route and collect the Black Magics there, then you can have Yuna use the Black Magic Spheres to get those abilities as well, and then she can actually attack with Black Magic, which is extremely helpful. But she can't do physical, she can't do magical, unless you're fighting, I guess, zombies, but that's very few and far between. And then you have Riku, who's not strong physically. Her magic is okay, but she doesn't get magic abilities, but what she can do is steal, and then she can use the items that she steals, which most of them are attacking, such as like a electric marble, which does electric damage, or thunder damage, or whatever, which does like 700 or 800 damage. Or she can steal grenades, like a petrify grenade, which petrifies enemies, or, you know, different things like that. But that forces her to steal first, in which case now you gotta get her down to Mug, so that Kimahri can use a Skill Sphere to also get Mug, so now Kimahri can steal and attack physically at the same time, which gives Riku the opportunity to actually use the items that is stolen, or sometimes bought, like a regular grenade and things like that. So it's a very wonky way to play the game, but it was so fun because it was so challenging, and it really forced me to think about what my next move should be. What should I do next? And it made Kimahri's overdrive so much more important, because with some of his overdrives, he can attack everybody, every enemy in the battle, which was extremely useful. And then I kept him with Slayer because he would generally be the one to kill all the fiends, because he's the only one that could actually deal relatively useful damage to fiends. So him always having an overdrive was really important. Obviously Riku's overdrive is useful as well for different reasons, and then Yuna's overdrive is useless because that would be for Aeons, which I bar myself from using because it's a self-imposed challenge. And Final Fantasy X has like a dozen or so challenges that have been created through the community, and it's just absolutely fantastic. And if you're bored of Final Fantasy X, if you played it so many times, I would highly recommend looking up the challenges that have been implemented, because it's insane. You know, there's like no sphere grid, no overdrive, no changing weapons, you stick with the basic weapon that you have, no magic, no physical attacks, things like that. It's really fascinating. And almost every game can have its own challenge in that way. I mean, for stuff like Tetris, for example, it's tough, if not impossible to do, because there's really not that much to work with. But for RPGs, they're naturally built to have so many different things that you can do that it makes it really easy to impose challenges because they give you so much to work with. Like Final Fantasy XII, for example. You can have only one class. Have everybody be one class. Everybody be a knight, everybody be a black mage, everybody be a monk. Or you can do, you have to have one class per person, or you have to use every class. I generally go by that rule most of the time, where I have to use every single class. Because there's 12 classes, there's 6 characters, and each character can have 2 classes at the same time, which implements all 12 classes. And that's really fun, because it forces me to see which class has great synergy with another class. Like, Bushi and Knight are apparently really good together, which actually worked pretty well in the last time I used it. I really love Black Mage and Monk, Black Mage and Archer. White Mage and Machinist is my personal favorite combination. See, it forces me to look at the game, see what works with what, and compile my team in a certain way, and it's like a simulation. I think that's pretty much everything that I want to talk about. I brought up all the points that I wanted to bring up, and I'm getting slightly exhausted, and I don't have much else to say in terms of that. What kind of challenges do you put in your video games? Are there a certain game that you like to challenge yourself with? What sort of challenges do you have for games? I want to know about it. I want to hear about it. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you want to. If you don't want to, that's up to you. But it's there if you'd like to listen for more. And as always, have a wonderful day.